This is the Jim Engster Show.
This is where Louisiana comes for information on the way home.
Intelligent talk for Louisiana.
This is where you hear the newsmakers, Louisiana personalities, celebrities, and the people who shape opinions.
Now, here's Jim Engster.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us. It's been a week and a few days now since Donald John Trump was elected president, and on the 20th day of January, as in 2 months and 2 days, he'll be installed as the 45th American president. And we are visiting with Lamar White, the celebrated blogger from Alexandria, sendlamar.com, and Lamar is based in Baton Rouge for much of his time now. And we'll also hear from Dianne Andrews, host of the Dianne Andrews Show, which is seen on many cable stations. If you've heard this show, you probably know that Lamar was a supporter of Hillary Clinton, and Dianne is jubilant about the victory of Donald Trump. Lamar, let's start with you. I haven't talked with you since the election, but I suspect you, like many, were surprised at the outcome.
Yeah, Jim, I think like many people, pretty much everyone, except for one political science professor out of Virginia, I was stunned by the result. But, the last time we talked, I recall telling you that Hillary Clinton's downfall was her arrogance, and I think that was proven to be true on last Tuesday. They just overestimated the level of support they had in the the Rust Belt, and they tried to play mind games when they probably should have just been going out there and hitting the dirt. So it's a shame, and it was a shocker.
Well, you mentioned the Rust Belt, the three states that she lost that had gone for Democrats in each election since 1988, and that would be 6 presidential elections: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those states collectively have 46 electoral votes, and she lost by close margins, by less than a percentage point in every one of them. For what it's worth, the national popular vote, the votes continue to come in, and Hillary Clinton now is at 62,842,000. Donald Trump is at 61,500,000. So Hillary Clinton is ahead by 1,342,000 votes on the popular vote side, and the percentage, 47.73 for Clinton, 46.71 for Trump. So she is now more than a full point ahead of him on a percentage basis. But we have a system in which the Electoral College prevails, and Donald Trump won fair and square. And is the popular vote a relevant discussion point, Lamar White?
Absolutely, it's a relevant discussion. I think that when you look at the fact that that a vote in, let's say, Wyoming counts twice as much as a vote in California, we do need to discuss whether or not we're abiding by the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. And I think that electoral college reform, we've been discussing it for more than 20 years now. Obviously, it came up in large part after Al Gore lost the presidential election to George Bush. Right now, we're seeing that Hillary Clinton has actually received at least 3 and perhaps as many as 4 to 5 times as many votes as Al Gore received in 2000. So we do need to discuss electoral college reform. There are a number of options that don't involve a constitutional amendment, that would just involve states sort of voluntarily deciding to allow their electors to go with whoever wins the popular vote nationwide. I think about 15 states have done that so far. And now is a good time. Hillary Clinton's already being called the people's president because of her large lead in the popular vote.
You mentioned 2000. Now, Gore, he got quite a few votes in that election, Lamar. He certainly got more than George Bush. But I'm pulling it up right now. In 2000,
I think he got 500,000 votes nationwide.
What now?
I said I think he got 500,000 more votes nationwide.
Yes, he did. 544,000 more than Bush. I see what you're saying. 2 to 3 times more as far as the percentage of victory, if you can call it victory. Yeah.
I believe Hillary Clinton's projected to get around 2.2 million votes when everything is said and done.
Well, we'll see, but that's not the way we select presidents, and some say it's sour grapes to even talk about it.
I don't know if it's sour grapes. I think that when Donald Trump wants to claim a mandate, I think he needs to be reminded of the fact that more people in America voted for his opponent, and that's legitimate. He has a very aggressive agenda that a lot of people think is scary, And this should hopefully temper him from doing radical things in America that we can't undo in the course of a single term.
Well, Donald Trump had said the system was rigged, and it may very well be rigged. Some would dispute that, and I think most of us believe that the system's pretty good. But if he had lost the popular vote, or had lost in the Electoral College, having prevailed in the popular vote by a couple of million votes, how do you think he would have reacted?
I think he would have said the system is rigged. I mean, remember in 2012, this guy on Twitter was saying that the Electoral College was a disaster and needed to be repealed. And just, a couple of days ago, he's saying that he told on Twitter, said it was a genius invention. So I think pretty much we could figure out what his contingency plan was in the event of that unlikely scenario where he won more popular vote but somehow lost the Electoral College.
We are joined by Dianne Andrews. I believe we have her on the line now. And Dianne, how do you see it? Does Trump have a mandate?
First, I'd like to say I think it is sour grapes to talk about our system is by Electoral College, and there have been 5 times in history, not just George Bush. There was 3 other presidents before George Bush that were elected by non-minority of the votes. I think California with 40 million people is always an anomaly, and we know there are more Hispanics there, although Donald Trump did end up getting 30% of the Hispanic vote, which I think may be a little more than Romney got, and 12% of the black vote. So he did as well and better with minorities in America than Romney did before him. Do I think it's what the Electoral College, we want to change it. I think that Hillary Clinton should, instead of telling people right now to don't give up the fight, which may incite people to continue to deface monuments and destroy part of America, should be saying he won fair and square by the laws of America today. That is what the law is. It is the Electoral College. If people want to worry about changing it, let's start changing it after the election. But I think things are too heated right now to talk about Electoral College. I agree with what you said. It's sour grapes. Donald Trump won fair and square by the American system.
All right. You mentioned some voter demographics, and I have an exit poll. Among blacks, 87% for Clinton, 8% for Trump, and the rest did not vote or for anybody or voted for another candidate. Among whites, Trump 55%, Clinton 37%. 55 to 37 among whites. Lamar White, your name is White, but but Trump just kicked ass with white voters. How did he do it?
Well, I mean, if you watch the last 15 to 16 months of the election, Donald Trump was on the campaign trail constantly being divisive, blaming the struggles of working-class white families on the other, whether it were Mexican immigrants or Muslim, people of a different faith. It to a large extent, I think it worked. It spoke to the resentment of the white working class. And, of course, there was a lot of built-in racial resentment against the first African-American president, along, with a number of the folks in this constituency that Donald Trump stoked by insisting that for many years, insisting that President Barack Obama was not born in the United States.
All right, hold tight. We're going to return with Lamar White and Dianne Andrews on opposite sides of Trump and Clinton, and we'll return in 2 minutes on the Louisiana Radio Network.
Will Rogers once said, "Politics has become so expensive, it takes a lot of money, even to be defeated."
This is Jim Engster. Thank you for joining us. Emily Gunn and Hailey Holloway producing in the Man Defined Meat studio. We're visiting with Lamar White. You can find out more about him by going to sinlamar.com. And Dianne Andrews of the Dianne Andrews Show. She is a staunch conservative. Lamar is I think fair to say, a liberal who backed Hillary Clinton, and Dianne Andrews is jubilant about the election of Donald Trump. Dianne Andrews, I asked Lamar about why so many white folks voted for Trump. He got 55% of the white vote nationally, and it is estimated received over 80% of the white vote in Louisiana. How do you explain it?
You're asking me, Jim, Dianne?
I am.
Okay. I think that let's be realistic too. Black people are 12 to 13% of the population. When Barack Obama was elected as the president 2 times, white people elected, more whites elected him than could blacks. The numbers just can't support black people only electing Barack Obama as president of the United States.
Wait a minute. He didn't get a majority of the white vote either.
No, but I'm saying he didn't get a majority, but he had to get enough. Black people only did not elect Barack Obama. A lot of white people voted for Barack Obama. It's not just minorities.
He got more white vote than Hillary Clinton did.
Right. And I think, was this election down as far as total votes anyway? Wasn't there less people who voted this time than they did 4 years ago and 8 years ago?
Well, by the time it's all said and done, there will probably be more people who voted this time, but there are more registered voters this time. So the turnout is possibly down, but we haven't counted all the votes yet. But for example, Mitt Romney got 47.2% of the votes 4 years ago of the total. This time, Donald Trump got 46.8%. So all this talk about Trump energizing voters, he didn't get as much of the electorate for him as Romney did 4 years ago. So
I think he energized a lot more voters in the primaries, in the primary campaign.
He may have. He defied the odds every step of the way. Did you back him every step of the way, or was this something that you had to think long and hard about?
I am not a supporter of Hillary Clinton. So I would go with the jest that they're two, as people said, they weren't the best candidates that we've ever had running for the president of the United States.
What was it that you didn't like about Hillary Clinton most?
I think Hillary Clinton, when she called people deplorables.
Yes. Okay, I think I see Miss Andrews, who has arrived in studio and should be a lot clearer now than she was a moment ago. And I asked her why she didn't like Hillary Clinton most, and she said when she called people deplorables. You didn't like that? Why not?
I don't like, it's a lot of things I don't like about the Clintons. A lot of blacks and minorities may not realize, and I know she's not accountable for her husband, Bill Clinton, but as we know, they were going to do Hillary care. I'm in healthcare also, and I'm not an advocate of Obamacare. And she's a supporter of Obamacare. I do a lot of television shows on the Middle East, and I don't think everything that was told us in the Middle East is fair and true of what we've injected and what's going on in the Middle East today. So there are a lot of things about Hillary Clinton. I don't like, when you're a woman, you purport all these things about women, but everybody who knows the history of her husband, she has not supported the women, and I guess no woman would who's married to somebody who's...
He wasn't on the ballot, though.
But it's her treatment. I agree with that. You cannot be responsible for your husband.
Hold that thought. Here is Donald Trump talking about a woman who he doesn't like a lot, Rosie O'Donnell. And let's give a listen to how Donald Trump talks about women he does not like.
Well, Rosie is a loser. Rosie's been a loser for a long time. Her magazine failed. She got sued. She folded up like a tent. It was too bad. Everything about Rosie, and I watch her, and somebody sent me a clip of what she said. Rosie is somebody out of control who really just doesn't have it. And she ought to be careful, because I'll send one of my friends to pick up her girlfriend, and I think it would be very easy. Rosie's first show had very poor ratings, and at the end she was doing very badly because the public got tired of her. And Rosie is somebody you get tired of. But her show did very poorly. Her magazine, I think it was called Rosie, was a total failure. Rosie is a failure. Ultimately, she will be a loser. And you watch. Watch what happens to The View. I will bet the ratings very shortly will start going down. People can't stand watching her. She's both unattractive inside and out. She's got some big problems.
What do you think?
Didn't the ratings go down on The View with Rosie? Didn't they take her off? I don't like the speech. I don't like what he's saying. Do I like everything Donald Trump says? No. Do I like everything Hillary Clinton says? No. But no, you don't talk about a woman. You don't talk about a man like that too much either. They're fat, they're ugly, they're this.
Well, Trump is fat.
Yeah, we talked about that when I was on your show before. You said we're going to have a fat president.
Is he a self-hating fat man?
I think it's more about women. I think he does. I think he likes to look at attractive women.
Well, yeah, but why should women be held to one standard?
They shouldn't be.
Okay, well.
I don't like everything Donald Trump says.
Would you be attracted to a guy like Donald Trump who's probably 70, 80 pounds overweight?
Is he that much overweight?
I think he's that overweight.
It kind of depends. It's not just for women. I don't think it's as much aesthetics of how you look as it is for men. It would depend on his conversation. I like a man that makes me laugh. So if he could make me laugh, that may have something to do. Hey, he's worth billions of dollars. Hey, let's go back to how much he's worth. If he picks me up in his jet gyms and flies me around the world, I may be attracted to Donald Trump.
All right, we'll be back with Dianne Andrews and with Lamar White after this time out on the Louisiana Radio Network.
Imagine this as the Jerry Springer Show.
For people who think.
This is the Jim Engster Show on the Louisiana Radio Network.
This is Jim Engster. Thank you for being with us. 877-217-5757. Donald John Trump will be the President of the United States come January 20th, 2 months, 2 days away, and he will be the heaviest president since William Howard Taft, and probably the wealthiest president of all time. What do you think? Lamar White with us, along with Dianne Andrews. Lamar supported Hillary Clinton. Dianne was backing Donald Trump. Lamar, do you think Trump will tone it down now that he has the job? He no longer needs to be the inflammatory Donald we saw on the trail?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think that this guy just loves to be loved. I think that Donald Trump enjoys his celebrity quite a bit. And so I do think that he'll tone it down because I think, like Nate Silver pointed out a few days ago, I think this is somebody who's going to be very focused on their approval ratings. And I don't see a lot of the most inflammatory stuff that he talked about on the trail. That may have appealed to the Republican base, but broadly speaking, it's not popular among the American population. So I do think that he will tone it down.
Okay. Joe in Baton Rouge. Joe, good afternoon. You're on the Jim Engster Show.
Yes, sir. I was really curious about the answer to your question about Rosie O'Donnell from.
Okay, Joe, hold on. No, you're fading out on us, and I don't want to lose you. But okay, go ahead.
The lady guest that you have there today, her answer to the Rosie O'Donnell tape?
Yes, sir.
I thought she was definitely right about that, and I was surprised that was her answer. But anyway, if Rosie O'Donnell had been a man, no one would be saying anything about it. But because she's a woman, they do. They seem to be offended by it. I don't think even Rosie O'Donnell was offended by it, quite frankly.
Well, he called her a fat slob. I don't imagine Donald Trump would like to be called a fat slob, but he's
but he would take it. He'd probably just turn around and give it as good as he got. That's what Rosie O'Onnell did.
She did too. You're right about that. She certainly she didn't.
Well, everything being
she didn't cry about it. But
that's right. Everything being equal, that's the way that it should be. And also, well, anyway, that's all. That's my comment.
Okay. Thank you. Marie in Prairieville. Marie, good afternoon. You're on with Lamar and Dianne. Hi, Marie.
Thank you for taking my call, Jim. I wanted to thank Miss Andrews for a point she made earlier, and that was regarding Hillary and how she treated the women that accused her husband of sexual assault and rape. The things that are recorded of what she said are far worse than anything Donald Trump said about women.
What did she say?
You're catching, I'm in my car and I'm calling on the fly. I do know that she called them liars. I do know that she said they were losers, ill-bred. Maybe I think that you know what she said. I think we all know what she said. And as a woman, to say that about other women, that is unacceptable to me.
But what if Hillary Clinton had talked about how she likes to walk up to a man and grab him by his penis? That's what Donald Trump said about women.
That does not bother me anywhere near the level of what she said about the women who accused her husband of his ill deeds. Understand, he was not running for office this time.
Okay.
That she
All right.
that she spent. It's documented, Jim, and I do apologize. I don't have.
That's
all
right. You expressed your point of view passionately, and that's what the show's about, and I appreciate it. But Dianne, your response.
As her calling all people that wanted to vote or did vote or supported Donald Trump deplorables, that includes women, men, black, white. And as you know, I'm a black woman.
She said half of his supporters were deplorables.
Okay, well, which half was it?
Maybe you were the other half.
Maybe I'm the other half, but it's left to the atmosphere which half she was talking about. But that's still something you don't say. And she also said, per the WikiLeaks, which they tried to say Russia did it, but John Podesta's emails and everything that was hacked, she said blacks just give them some programs, Mexicans are helpless, and I really can't relate to the rest of the world because I haven't driven a car since 1995. And now what are you worth? $250 million, and you've never given anybody a job except in a political campaign.
Before we hit the break, I'd like to have Lamar respond. Lamar, what do you think?
Well, I think that the last two callers and your guest have both underlined the fact that this election was heavily influenced by a ton of misinformation and false reports. I mean, I don't know what the lady was speaking about when she said Hillary Clinton has said far worse things about Bill Clinton's accusers. I think the worst thing she's ever said is she privately told a friend of hers that she thought Monica Lewinsky was a bimbo. But the stories, we saw this. There's a study about this on BuzzFeed that came out yesterday that the week before the election, there were more fake news sites shared on Facebook than real news sites. So I think a lot of this is attributable to just false reporting and, this climate that really was manufactured in large part by Russia.
877-217-5757, your number. We'd like to hear from you, and we'll hear more from Dianne Andrews and Lamar White when we return after this time out on the Louisiana Radio Network.
If people want to know if they've really made it in Louisiana, they check to see if they're in Jim's Rolodex. Rolodex? Yeah, he's old school. This is the Jim Engster Show on the Louisiana Radio Network.
This is Jim Engster. Thanks for joining us. 877-217-5757. Emily Gunn and Hailey Holloway producing in the Manda Fine Meat Studio. Manda Flavor Says It All. Lamar White from SinLamar.com and Dianne Andrews of the Dianne Andrews Show on opposite sides of the election, which took place 9 nights ago. And Donald Trump is the winner by virtue of a healthy win in the Electoral College, 306 to 232. But Hillary Clinton has now moved ahead by almost 1.4 million votes in the popular vote. Dawn in Baton Rouge. Good afternoon, Dawn. You're on the Jim Engster Show.
Yes, I'd just like to say that what I'm surprised by is that nobody has mentioned her lies, Hillary's lies, and her corruption. It's been shown that the Clinton Foundation was using pay for play, and as well as she exposed our national security secrets with her emails, and that's why I voted for Trump.
All right, but you said nobody's mentioned that. I think it's been mentioned quite a bit.
I meant on this show today.
Okay, well, thank you for mentioning it. What about Lamar, the Trump Foundation versus the Clinton Foundation? They both seem to have some issues.
Well, I mean, I just push back on both of those things that your caller just said. First of all, no charges have ever been brought against Secretary Clinton for compromising our national security. That's just complete falsehood. And to accuse her of jeopardizing national security, again, goes to this whole fake news stuff that we saw a lot during the election. The Clinton Foundation, the same thing. I mean, they're rated an A rating by an objective, nonpartisan, nonprofit watchdog. There's really no comparison between the work that the Clinton Foundation does throughout the globe in combating disease and in poverty and disaster relief, and what Donald Trump's vainglorious nonprofit does, purchasing 20-foot portraits of the Donald and paying off legal fees that he's incurred. I think that we're going to see some more investigations into the Trump Foundation over the course of the next 4 years, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some convictions or at least some charges, because there are some serious stories that came out by serious actual reporters that leads to a lot of questions about the work that they've done.
Dianne?
There have been serious actual reporters also about the Hillary Clinton scandals, and they didn't just start. But I'm going to go back to, I agree totally with what the lady said about, I do television shows. I've done shows on Libya. I've done 9 shows on the Middle East. And some of the things that went on when she was Secretary of State with Assad in Syria and all of those, I think that we did help fuel some of the fires in the Middle East when she was Secretary of State. And it's obvious that their policies, even when George Bush was there, maybe it was a mistake, and it probably was, to go into Iraq, but now we've gone into multiple countries in there. The Middle East is in the biggest mess it's been in the last 30 years.
All right, so you believe it was a mistake to go into Iraq?
I do.
Okay. Well, Hillary Clinton was in favor of that. Donald Trump...
he wasn't a politician, though.
He told Howard Stern he was in favor, but says he wasn't.
Right. And he wasn't a politician at the time.
He wasn't a politician, but he didn't have any votes to be accountable for.
Right.
So her 30 years in public service may have been a hindrance rather than a help.
Right.
Okay. All right. 877-217-5757. Stan in Baton Rouge. Stan, good afternoon. You're on the Jim Engster Show. Hi, Stan. All right. Let's see, Emily, if we've got Mr. Stan. Lamar White, when we look at the election, there's a big gap in education. Donald Trump, high school or less, he won the vote, the popular vote. College graduates, Hillary Clinton won. And if you're a postgraduate person, she got 23% more than he did. Is that part of the elitism that enabled Trump to win this election?
I wouldn't necessarily call it elitism, but I think I'm going to connect it again to the proliferation of fake news that we saw throughout this election and the influence of Russia in spreading WikiLeaks, which was an asymmetrical attack against only one person in the entire race. Remember, there were at some point as many as 21 different candidates in this race, and only one was targeted by WikiLeaks. So, people need to make up their mind about what exactly that was about. But yeah, I think that the more educated and informed you are on the issues, the more likely it was for people with higher education and more information at their disposal to decide to vote for Hillary Clinton. And we've seen that in the last few elections, that Democrats typically win high information and more educated voters. It's not a value judgment against people without a college education. It's just, like you said, it's just the way things break down.
I have an MBA, and I was for Donald Trump. But you mentioned, I think when I was, before I got in studio, that some was due to her arrogance. Her own husband, Bill Clinton, told her to go to Wisconsin. Since the primary, I don't think Hillary Clinton went to Wisconsin. She did take for granted the Rust Belt, those states. Pennsylvania hadn't been won in years. He won Ohio, which no Republican has ever won the presidency, I think, without winning Ohio, even though the governor was not for him there. So I think there were a lot of things he got his jet, and who else has put their own money into their own campaign? Millions and millions of dollars. The last night of the campaign, he went to 6 states by flying his own jet with his own money.
Stan in Baton Rouge. Stan, good afternoon. You're on the air with Dianne Andrews and Lamar White. Hi, Stan.
Hey, thank you. I just want to ask y'all a question. A lot of people will say, well, Trump's not really a Republican. The reason I voted for him, I just want to change, and it might not be. But it does seem like the Democratic Party is the same party. I'm 60 that my mom and dad used to belong to. I mean, I know they call themselves progressives. I know that Roosevelt tried that one time, and he lost an election just because of that. Because I think they believe.
Who are you talking about? Franklin Roosevelt?
Yes.
He never lost a presidential election.
Teddy. I thought so. One of those. I know one of them.
Teddy lost once, but he didn't run as a Democrat.
Yeah, he ran as a progressive, didn't he?
A bull moose, but he never was a Democrat. He was a Republican.
Okay, and he. But what I mean is, I seen that on the History Channel, I think, where he ran. It was about him as a progressive. And can y'all kind of tell me the difference? And do you think they're more progressive than Democrats?
Okay. I think the term is progressive, and we've got to take a break. But when we return, we'll talk with Lamar White and Dianne Andrews about what a progressive means and where did those votes go a week ago Tuesday. 877-217-5757. We return after this pause on the Louisiana Radio Network.
This show is low-fat, gluten-free, and loaded with protein. Really, you get healthier just by listening.
These claims have not been evaluated by the FDA.
This is the Jim Engster Show on the Louisiana Radio Network.
This is Jim Engster. Thank you for joining us. Emily Gunn and Hailey Holloway producing, and Dianne Andrews and Lamar White, our guests. One more segment, 877-217-5757. We'd like to hear from you. And Lamar, I'm old enough to remember when candidates would actually say they were liberal. Now they generally say they're progressive. What does that mean?
It essentially means the same thing, I think. Like the previous caller said, progressive probably meant something a little bit different in the early 20th century than it does today. But I think that for the most part, you can substitute liberal with progressive. The word liberal became kind of toxic. The Republican conservative sort of talk radio movement made it toxic, so we shifted our rhetoric, and now we call everyone progressives. It does sound better too, so I sort of understand the shift.
AB in Baton Rouge. AB, you're on with Dianne and Lamar. Hi, AB.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine.
I'm a New Yorker that transplanted to Louisiana about 3-4 years ago. And, my question with Hillary, and I went with Trump, was, the years you see him, and I voted for Clinton back in the late 80s, over Bush, who I thought was very well qualified.
That would have been 1992.
92, exactly. And they always say she was the most qualified person to run for president. I always felt that George Bush Sr. was, a UN ambassador, a senator, vice president, CIA. But my question is that when they came to New York, it seems like, well, we're done with Arkansas. We don't need that anymore. And then they came to New York, and that was like pushing people out of the way to get this lady to be senator in New York.
Well,
and now you see the same.
What part of New York did you live in?
I used to be a New York City police officer.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I lived in Queens.
Excellent.
But then I finally moved to New Jersey.
But she not only moved to New York, she moved to the whitest county in New York. Chappaqua is the city.
Chappaqua, we call it North Cupcake. But there was a lot of, infighting politically in New York. Schumer, I want to say it was Patterson, who used to be and Charlie Rangel and all these people.
Well, but
they
I
were
think
twisting arms to get her in there.
She did get 82%, I believe, in New York City. That's the figure I heard. And
you register as a Democrat, you're guaranteed to get it. About 70 in New York.
And Trump becomes the first president not to carry his home state in a win since Woodrow Wilson. But what AB says, Lamar, it gets to the arrogance you were talking about. The Clintons, I think they did write off the South once they moved to New York.
Well, I will say that this year during the primaries, for what it's worth, they didn't write off the South in the primary elections.
They
did invest a lot. They invested a lot more than, let's say, Bernie Sanders did in southern states like South Carolina and even Louisiana, where she won by 49 points. But I do hear your caller's point. I would also, point out though that Robert F. Kennedy, obviously not a native of New York, moved to New York, relocated there, and became senator just like Hillary Clinton did. So there is precedent for that.
No, there's nothing wrong with what she did, but Bill Clinton, when he won, he carried Louisiana twice, he carried Arkansas twice, he carried Tennessee twice, he carried Florida once, Georgia once. He carried some southern states, and she lost in every one of them south of Virginia, and lost in the SEC 11-0, 150 electoral votes to 0 in the Southeastern Conference. So Dianne Andrews, the SEC elected Donald Trump.
That's right. We got Donald Trump. I'm not a part of that, but if you look at also, Bill Clinton also has a history, and I think some of that may have been part of the result as blacks didn't come out for Hillary Clinton. When we look at the three strikes you're out rule, when we look at NAFTA, a lot of the manufacturing jobs out of Detroit, where the Democrats have kind of sent, even Chrysler and GM, who are not made in America too much anymore. A lot of that is manufactured now, and that was from this current Democratic seat president in Canada and Mexico, and mostly in in Mexico.
All right,
so we look at the manufacturing job. That has hurt black people, not just the coal mining jobs, and that's hurt unskilled laborers a lot. And as your percentage shows, that's where Donald Trump made a great headway.
Are you optimistic of a Trump presidency?
I think, as even Mr. White said, Mr. Lamar said, that he will tone it down. He does like to be the star of the show. He loves to be approved. And I think, and you can say that for more than Donald Trump. Everyone likes to be liked. You know, you want great approval ratings. President Obama has had great approval, 57%, 56% now as he leaves office. But then if you look at his policies, they were not, if people had loved his policies, another thing may have helped Hillary Clinton.
All right, Lamar, is the Trump presidency going to be a disaster in your view, or does he have a chance to be successful?
Well, of course he has a chance to be successful, but I would put odds on the same guy from Virginia that said that Trump was going to win this election. The only person that I'm aware of that said it also predicts that Trump will get impeached within the first year or two. And the same thing that Malcolm Gladwell has said about Trump. So, you know, the odds are that no, it'll be a disaster, especially if he surrounds himself with these white nationalist types. I mean, it's just he's setting up a recipe for disaster and division in this country. But I hope, like I said earlier, and like Dianne just reminded me, that he's gonna really obsess over his approval ratings, and that maybe he'll govern by consensus. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Dianne, you've got 15 seconds to respond.
Do I have to respond? I want to say something about Hillary Clinton and the woman. When Hillary Clinton, the woman issue you asked me earlier, I really wanted
Hillary's
to get
yesterday's news. She's gone, Dianne.
Okay. What do you want me to respond to that Mr. White said?
Well, you've got the 15 seconds to say anything you want.
Okay, then I'll say this. When she was, which, you know, as we know, Bill Clinton was impeached and he was disbarred. Hillary Clinton, though, when she was a lawyer, when he was governor, right before he was governor in Arkansas, there was a 12-year-old girl who was raped. And I heard in her own words her make a joke about the rapist was 40 years old and he took the polygraph test, and she said, ha, 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 now I have no more, I don't believe in polygraphs anymore, making a joke about it. And I think a lot of that, Mr. White said, a lot of this was fake news or not real news, but you can hear that in her own words about women.
Lamar, yes or no, was it true about the rapist and Hillary?
No, it's not true. She was not laughing at a rapist. She was laughing at a question from an interviewer.
All right, that's it. We're back after this timeout.
She was laughing.
We're just wondering, what do you think is the scariest night of the year? Halloween or election night? More of the Jim Engster Show coming up here on the Louisiana Radio Network. Thanks for listening to the Jim Engster Show. Follow Jim on Twitter at Jim Engster Show. Like Jim on Facebook at Jim Engster Show. Get more information on Jim and the show at jimengster.com. This program is intended for the sole use of our audience and licensed affiliates. Copyright 2016 Louisiana Radio Network. Any unauthorized use of this program material is strictly prohibited. This is a production of the Louisiana Radio Network.